Hi, my name's Keith Cooper from Northlight Images, and in this short video I'm going to look at an aspect of using lens shift in landscape photography. And shift is generally thought of as something used for architectural photography, which is what I do, but it's also useful in landscape photography for changing the perspective of how a picture looks. Now, obviously it doesn't change the perspective. The only real way to change the perspective of a scene in front of you is to look at it from a different place. But it's often called that. In fact, Nikon's tilt shift lenses are known as PC or perspective control lenses. But we can argue over that another time. This is about using shift, vertical shift, and importantly diagonal shift. Diagonal shift is something a lot less photographers seem to know about than using ordinary shift, either up, down, left, right. And it allows you to change interesting things about clouds. So we'll start with an example. This is on the Northumberland coast. Now I'm going to be testing some larger printers later this year, hopefully. And I was up in Northumberland just recently. Great place, empty beaches, wonderful time. And these are the Farne Islands. There's a lighthouse on it. The white on the rocks is because of all the birds that live there. This is a straightforward view with a 24mm lens. In fact, it's this one. It's the Canon TSE 24 Mark II. This is just using it as a 24mm lens. And I'm pointing it at the horizon. I've got the horizon runs right through the middle of the picture. Yeah, that's okay. Lovely beach. It was fairly low tide. Yeah, the beaches like this, you can get miles of beaches and you'll come across 2 or 3 people on them. It's a really nice place. This is an interesting day, lots of cloud out to sea, just bits of sun breaking through from behind me. I'd quite like to look at later this year, as I say, when I'm doing some looking at larger printers, to make some large prints. So these are taken with this 50 megapixel camera. Handheld, because I can't be bothered to take a tripod with me on holiday. I will sometimes, but in general, handheld is just fine. I know some people say, oh no, you can't do that. Yeah, you can. It's results that count, and I'm happy with this. But anyway, there we go. There's a straightforward look out to sea. We've got some interesting cloud. I'm not really that bothered about the sand and the seaweed on the picture, so we'll add a bit of vertical shift. Now, vertical shift, all I'm seeing is more of the image circle of the lens. I've pushed the horizon right down to the bottom of the image, and we've got the clouds, and as you'd expect with a wide angle lens, because we're seeing a wider angle of view because of the shift here. So all I'm doing for this example here is shifting the lens upwards. So the lens moves upwards and shows more of the top of the image circle. So we get a slight bit of angling of the clouds. You get this sort of wide angle lens. You take a picture of a view on a cloudy day with 12mm lens or something like that, and any clouds will look in the corners as if they are heading off out of the frame. It's a natural distortion because you're using a rectilinear lens. It's often called a wide angle distortion. It's why if you have in the bottom of the frame, people's faces don't tend to look good with a rectilinear lens. But for landscape, I've pushed this up. I've now got the horizon, where I might want it. I want to show the sea, but I want to emphasize the sky here. We've got quite a bit there. I haven't processed these images very much. I would do a lot more for them when I do prints, and I'll hopefully cover that in a video talking about making some prints of some landscape images. But that's just straightforward looking up. Now, here I've just panned the camera slightly to the right to move the lighthouse and island here away from the centre. I just want to make the picture a little bit more dynamic, and having it away from the centre here just adds a little bit of imbalance and just gives a bit more movement to the picture, gives a bit of a feel for it. I would say of any picture like this where you've got waves breaking, take a whole lot and see which ones, because you can never tell from 1 second to the next which waves are going to look great. Nothing wrong with taking loads of pictures and taking the best ones. But here we are, I've just panned the camera around. Here's the lighthouse, and the clouds look fairly similar. Still with vertical shift. So we're not getting any distortion of the lighthouse. If I had a very wide angle lens, and pan it around, that's wider than this, say a 17 rather than this, which is 24mm, I might start getting some stretching in the corners. And with this here, it might not look quite right, but the vertical shift takes care of that. If you're unfamiliar with shift lenses in general, I've done quite a few videos. I've written a book about how to use tilt shift lenses, but that's just vertical shift panned round. Yeah, it's okay. What about, I've now got vertical shift, but instead of panning round, I've used diagonal shift. And for diagonal shift, here's the lighthouse here. I'm pointing the camera at the lighthouse, but have shifted the lens diagonally, and there's a little mount on the side of it so I can do this. And if I shift the lens diagonally, the lens moves that direction. Now diagonal shift, I've written some articles, covered in a video, is not that commonly used. So the camera is actually pointing here. The vertical shift drops the horizon in the frame, and the diagonal shift gives a strong directionality to the cloud. Now this can vary from minute to minute as the clouds move, so once again take several shots. I know some people say landscape photography slows you down, makes you think. I've never bought in with that. Landscape photography to me is about the moment. I don't have the patience to sit for hours waiting for things to happen. Never have done. It ain't going to happen. I treat landscape photography as large-scale street photography. It's about what's there in front of you at that moment. Now, there is a bit of planning goes into it, so locations and things, but it's certainly not set things up for ages on a tripod and wait. I just haven't got the patience for that. It's never going to happen. But what we've got here is vertical shift, diagonal shift, and you'll see there are quite strong linear elements now appearing in the clouds. They may not necessarily be obvious to you looking at it when you just look at the scene, but when you look in this camera with diagonal shift, you see this movement. If I swap it the other way around, I've now pointing the camera still at the island here, but instead of shifting the lens that direction diagonally, I've shifted it that direction diagonally. It gives you a bit more control over how the cloud feeds into the rest of the image. Here we get a distinct feeling for the cloud pointing towards that way, whereas when I go to the other side, same view but diagonal shift the other way, the cloud now points that direction towards that. Now we'll see actually when it comes to making prints how much what you see here transfers into what you get making a print. The screen is not the print, so there's a lot of work to go between an image here and a large print. And by large print I mean 36 by 24 or something like that, inches that is. So we're not talking small desktop printers, we're talking big printer here. And that is where things like this make quite a difference. Now, hopefully I will be able to show you some large prints of some of these images at some point, and you'll be able to see the point I was making. But hopefully you're getting an idea that shift lens is not just about stopping making buildings fall over. That's that one. Now, in Amble, the village where we were staying, small town, this is the harbour. I'm pointed the camera at this boat here. Now, because of the threatening weather that's bearing in on it, and they're loading up with ice here to try and get out back to sea, it's high tide, so they want to go before the tide drops because quite a tidal range here. I've got the lines of cloud. Now I've pointed the camera at the subject and then shifted diagonally this direction to give a look here, and the cloud just happens to line up nicely and point towards that. Of course, you can put something in this space here. It will be stretched because of the shift, because of the diagonal shift, and it's effectively using a part of a very wide angle lens. And there we are with a boat conveniently placed in the space here. And that boat doesn't look distorted. It looks fine. So that's just a different way of doing it. Lots of different ways you can play around with this. Have a look at some of the stuff I've done on using shift lenses about diagonal. But this is really just to give you an instance that it's not just for buildings and the like. And I'll finish up. There's a black and white view. Now I'm looking here along this walkway. The camera is pointed here. The shift is over this direction. And it all gives a sense of movement in the picture. So hopefully that gives a bit of an idea about using diagonal shift. I mentioned I've got a book on it. I'm contractually obligated to mention this apparently, but it's good, I'm told. Oh no, it's me, I wrote it, but yeah, it's good. Hopefully you enjoy it. Please do, if you've got any questions, please ask here on the comments or drop me an email. Thank you.